Headlined by the U.S. Senate race, next year's ballot in Indiana and Vanderburgh County will include elections for statewide offices like auditor, treasurer, and secretary of state. The 8th District congressional race and elections in legislative districts and judicial, county, township, and school board races will spell out what's at stake in next year's midterm election locally next on Newsmakers, presented by WNIN and the Evansville Courier and Press. A slew of elections for federal, state, and local offices next year offers potential political ramifications nationally and locally. I'm joined by Sarah Less, local government reporter for the Evansville Courier and Press, backed by popular demand. Sarah, welcome back to the big time. Don't let it go to your head.
I've seen that happen before, up close.
Up close?
Yeah, about 2 feet.
Ho, ho, ho. Well, let's get on with our show. We'll have a number of experts to discuss the details, and then we'll talk with local leaders in the political parties about how they are preparing for next year's elections later in the program. But first, Anthony Will, an Evansville native and co-founder of Washington, D.C.-based campaign finance consulting firm Circa Victor, has estimated that $50 million in campaign cash will be spent statewide in Indiana. Anthony is here with us today from Washington to explain that and to outline a scenario that could drive that number even higher in Indiana and other states. Anthony, thank you for being with us today.
Happy to be here, Tom.
So, break it down for us. How did you arrive at $50 million?
Well, I kind of looked at the state legislative spending from 2020 and 2018 in the state house, which is your state representatives, your state senators, probably going to be about 15 million and just those races alone. In addition, you could have a potential about 15 to 20 million, 25 million potentially with the Indiana Senate race, as well as you have multiple county commissioners, county boards, city councils, additionally up for election next year. So there's going to be a lot of spending going on. And what's unique is this number, while it's high, it pales in comparison to what Indiana saw in 2016 and 2018. In 2016, there was an open Senate race, which is Todd Young is currently running for re-election in that race. In that race alone, there was 45 million spent by outside groups. In 2018, Joe Donnelly was defeated by Mike Braun, and right there we saw 70 million. But this is Indiana was in a unique position then with an open Senate race in 1 year, and then another race held by a Democrat, or another seat held by a Democrat that is in a primarily Republican state. So the number is going to be high.
Right. Well, redistricting, the process that Indiana and other states went through this year to redraw the boundaries for state legislative and congressional districts, how might that affect and play into that $50 million in spending statewide?
So a lot of these new districts, the representatives and the state senators are going to want to be able to spend money, even if they're in a safe district, basically to get out there and get their name in front of the new voters, the new constituents, if you will. So this is going to drive spending a little bit higher than what we've seen in previous elections, simply because these candidates want to get their positions out there. They want to get out there and reach the voters, new voters who may not be familiar with their positions.
And I imagine that would go for incumbents and challengers, and even if they're in politically hospitable districts.
Exactly. Yeah, they're going to want to spend just to get their positions out there, get their name ID out there. Politicians are always thinking about the next election and always thinking about name ID. which are two critical things for running in office.
Now, there's one eventuality that you've told me could dramatically impact the amount of money spent in Indiana and everywhere in the country. Tell us about that.
So, again, I don't think Indiana will attract as much outside spending as we've seen in 2016 or 2018, simply because this is a primarily Republican. Todd Young is fairly popular, but one potential that could happen is if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade. If that was to occur, then I would foresee that both sides would be spending heavily. Democrats would be spending for the pro-choice platform. Republicans would be spending for pro-life platform. And that right there would be a political grenade, basically. Spending would skyrocket if a drastic shift in policy was to occur.
When are we expecting that decision to be handed down?
That decision is supposed to be coming down right in June of next year, so right in the thick of the election cycle. So
okay.
We'll be after the primaries.
Well, Anthony, thank you for joining us on Newsmakers from Washington, D.C.
Not a problem. I'm happy to be here, and great talking with you, and have a great day.
Thank you, sir. We have with us Ed Fagenbaum, editor of Indiana Legislative Insight and one of the state's top political analysts. Ed, welcome to Newsmakers.
Great to be with you, Tom.
Thank you, sir. Ed, two of the top officials in state government are from Vanderburgh County, Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch and Secretary of State Holly Sullivan. But next year, Sullivan faces a stern challenge to be nominated by the Republican Party, and it's not going to be in an election. Tell us about that.
Well, there are two candidates that are challenging her. I think there's potentially a perception that she may not be raising enough money as quickly as she could, and that she may not have the kind of grassroots support that she might have from the conservative wing of the party, and that there may be an opportunity for people who have some kind of other expertise and other work with the grassroots to make some inroads there. And so there are two candidates that have decided to run against her. One is Diego Morales, a former Pence administration aide, who's also run for Congress before and tried to run for Secretary of State 4 years ago. And you also have a gentleman from Newton County, former county official there, a county clerk there, and now a county commissioner who has extensive experience in elections and has a wide network of friends around the county government network statewide, and that's something that really helps in a convention setting.
Well, Ed, this nomination will be decided in a convention, as we said, so please explain the difference between a convention and a primary election.
Well, in a primary, you have the party core come out to vote for their candidates, to nominate their candidates, but a convention is kind of a super version of that. You've got the core of the core. You've got the most committed supporters, the people that put their name on the ballot to be elected delegates, the people that take a day or two to come from their homes down to Indianapolis, or a few years ago the convention was in Evansville, it was in Fort Wayne a couple of years ago as well, but they make a special commitment, and there's a real attempt by certain factions to get their people elected delegates, and those are the people that make the choices for the party.
Well, if the convention is running late or they get to a third ballot or whatever, somebody may decide it's not worth staying if they need to be home at 10 o'clock at night or something, right?
And the 2022 convention is going to be in Indianapolis, so it makes it a lot more difficult for somebody from Evansville, for example, to justify staying in town for that, or even from Newton County, where you've got the one candidate who's the county official to stay. So the dynamics are totally different than they would be in a primary. The people that you have to appeal to are totally different, and it's really the core of the core that you're trying to get. And it's very easy, much easier to affect a convention election by a particular faction of the party than it is in a primary election setting.
Well, Ed, in the less than 1 minute that we had left, explain to us, how does it help Evansville or any city in Indiana to have a statewide elected official?
Well, it's just like when Mike Pence was vice president. You wanted to have somebody there who understood the state, and in this case, you're talking about the southwestern region of the state, but somebody who knows what's going on, knows the issues, knows the problems, and also knows everybody in power. They can pick up the phone and call the Secretary of Transportation, the Secretary of Commerce, and say, hey, look, we've got a real problem with this particular interchange or this exit. Or at this interchange, we've got some open land that might be appropriate for an industrial prospect that you're trying to land. So it really does help to have somebody in office and high office from your area.
Ed Fagenbaum, thank you for joining us from Indianapolis on Newsmakers.
Thanks for the opportunity, Tom.
Yes, sir.
We're joined today by Caitlin Lang, the Indy Star State House reporter, who's coming from the Indiana State House to talk to us today. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So Caitlin, to start off, can you give a brief explanation of what happened with redistricting this year, kind of a brief synopsis for everyone?
Sure. It was a very strange redistricting cycle. Because of the delay in census data results, we actually couldn't start redistricting until this fall. So it was a condensed process, more so than usual, and it happened after the normal general session. So there was definitely a lot more focus on it and more criticism to go around because it was the only thing going on. And within the redistricting process, the Republicans were able to control much of what happened because they do have a supermajority. They do control both chambers. So they were able to essentially draw the maps with little to no Democratic input from that side of the aisle. And obviously the governor is also a Republican, so he obviously was willing to sign those maps into law as well.
Okay. And as far as down in this area of the state, can you talk a little bit about what redistricting looked like around Evansville and the southern area?
Yeah, so the Evansville maps didn't change drastically, but the few things that I noticed was, first of all, with the 8th Congressional District represented by Representative Bucshon, that was made to encompass a larger area and now would include Orange and Crawford counties moving forward. So he does have a bigger area to represent and worry about, and that was largely due to just the growth patterns of the state. In terms of population shifts from 2010 to 2020, Central Indiana grew a lot, while areas in the southwestern portion of the state did not. You have Vanderbilt County that grew by, I believe, 0.2%, and other areas lost population down there. So a lot of that was just driven by population changes. So you saw Bucshon get a bigger area. And then in terms of both the state house and state senate districts, most of those stayed pretty consistent, but Senate District 50, which is represented by Senator Vanita Becker, now contains more of Warwick County, which does seem to vote more Republican than Vanderbilt County does usually. So it'll be really interesting to see how that district is impacted moving forward, since Vanita Becker is typically one of the more moderate Republicans in the Senate, and I wonder how much of that is due to the makeup of her district until this point.
Okay. And as far as some of those areas within the state where you see potential for redistricting to make a big impact come election time, can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, so I don't see a lot of changes come election time in the southwest portion of the state in the Evansville area. The only thing I can see is maybe moving forward, Senate District 50 might become, more Republican, as I had mentioned. In terms of some of those areas of the state that will be impacted, you have the Congressional 5th District up near Hamilton County area, up in the central Indiana. That's one where we're going to see a huge impact because lawmakers took out Marion County from that district, so it's going to be a lot less competitive. So I think that's the major area you're going to see a big change moving forward. Aside from that, Republicans really did solidify their supermajorities in both chambers and in the congressional delegation as well. So I think that's the main impact, the main takeaway from redistricting is that Republicans are going to be safe moving forward over the next decade.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us, Caitlin.
Thanks for having me.
We have with us Mike Duckworth, chairman of the Vanderbilt County Republican Party. Mike, thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
So going into this year's primary, everyone is interested in the prosecutor's race. It's one of the top ones for the Republican Party looking ahead. Can you tell me a little bit about what we might expect from that race?
Well, I think it'll be a spirited race. I think Nick Herman, who has been, of course, not only prosecutor, but the former chairman of our party, is, as you well know, has had some issues, and I think those will probably come to the forefront during this primary and even into the general election. I've talked to Nick briefly, and he's geared up to run again. I'm sure he will answer what questions that are brought to him in regards to his record and his performance in that role, and it ought to make a real good primary.
And other than prosecutor, what are some of the races that are kind of on the mind of the Republican Party right now?
Well, I would say right now we have for the first time in a while, we have a sheriff's candidate. Jeff Hales is running, and if he would be successful, it would be the first Republican sheriff since I was on the sheriff's department back in the early 80s. So he's out and he's doing his thing, meeting people and raising money and those things that you need to do. I think he's formally going to file in January, but he's already out running pretty strong. I would say our commissioner's race, looks like Justin Elpers is going to run. And when I say these names, it doesn't mean that someone else isn't. It's just that I haven't heard, who at that point. With the prosecutor's race, Diana Merce is the only other name I've heard. But past that, we have other county offices that will have incumbents, and some may end up not running. But we look very long and hard to recruit good people that can represent this community the best way that they can and know how, bring good experience to the table, and we look forward to it.
Well, Mike, a candidate who wants to run as a Republican doesn't have to inform you or the party, could just go and file, is that right?
That's exactly right. So that's why I say I don't know who else might be interested. Those are the folks that have contacted me that have shown interest, and of course we don't really get extremely involved in primary races. We provide training for anyone that might want to run through our district, and I think they have a training set up in January in Vincennes, and they go up and they take them through everything from fundraising to candidate or volunteer recruitment and those kinds of things.
And in the brief time that we have left, can you quickly mention a little bit about what this last push before those January filing dates looks like for candidates?
Well, I took over from Wayne Park, who had been county chairman for 10 years, and we have tried to kind of look back and cherry-picked all the good things that Wayne has done, and he did quite a few, and then looking forward to see what changes we might need to make. We've changed our headquarters. We had a meet and greet of our Central Committee. We have also, had our normal things, our Lincoln Day dinner, and we had participation in the 4-H fair and the Fall Festival. So, we've done the regular things. We've raised some money. We're going to continue to do that, and we're going to try to do some new things that will attract other folks. We had a lady, Mary Jo Kaiser, that had been with us for years. She retired, so we've hired a new political coordinator as well. That's a 22-year-old U of E student. So we're
Mike, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you showing up for Newsmakers today.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're joined today by Cheryl Schultz, who is the chair of the Vanderburgh County Democratic Party. So heading into the primary, the Democrats have one of the most high-profile races with the sheriff race. Can you talk a little bit about what preparation has been like for that over the past year?
Well, that race in particular, the two individuals who are running elected to open their exploratory committees fairly early. We haven't had too many people start to run this early in the process. And so as the party chair, I don't take a stance. I don't support one candidate over the other. We support them both equally. I know that they've both been very busy working and raising money and making their names known in the community. Official filing is January 5th through February 4th, so that's when candidates actually will file for office. Right now they've just opened exploratory committees, which one has to do in order to raise funds.
Mm-hmm. And other than sheriff, right now, what are some of the races that are on you guys' minds?
Well, we have several state House representative seats that we're looking at. Those are ones that we're trying to find individuals for, and we're so split in counties that Vanderburgh alone does not have one representative. So we have to work in conjunction with Posey and Warwick County to find candidates for those positions. We have a county commissioner seat that we will need to fill. We have 4 county council seats. Districts 1, 2, 3, and 4 are up for election this year. All of the township trustees are up for election, and their advisory boards, which consist of 3 different people. So that's quite a few people right there just in the township arena. Prosecutor race, we do have that in play. And I know there's probably some that I haven't listed all completely, but those are some of the main ones. Oh, auditor and assessor. Those are 2 big county-wide races too that we are focusing on.
And can you talk a little bit about what it's been like finding candidates? What's that process like for you guys?
It's an involved process, and it requires a lot of people. You start out with a list. We find out which offices are up for election. We started recruiting back in March. And we reach out to people who might be interested. We hold opportunities for people to come listen and hear what we offer, what the candidates need to know for what they're running for, so you know what the job entails. So this year, to make things a little bit simpler, I put together a booklet. And what I wanted to do was be able to inform candidates, first of all, what is the job? You know, we have jobs that are available for you to run for. So we listed a complete description of what the job is and what the requirements are, because some of them require testing, some require different licensing, so you want to make sure that the person is well qualified for the job. And then we started reaching out, and we have a committee of individuals who reaches out to different people. And so we've gotten a very good response, and so this past week we had a candidate meeting and dinner. And part of that was to get all of our candidates in one room so that they could meet each other, because they will be seeing a lot of each other, get to know each other, and work collaboratively, that we are working as a unified group. But we went through the process of how you file, how do you form a campaign committee, because a lot of people don't realize there's more involved than to just saying, I want to run for office. So we went through all of the details for how to set up the committee, what you need to do that, and then set your filing dates, let us know, because we want to let the press know when people are filing, because I think it's something of interest to the community. Putting your committees together. We need people that will serve as campaign managers and campaign treasurers. We've reached out to our base to jump in and help people with those efforts.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you, Cheryl, for joining us.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We're joined now by Jay Salman, who is the 8th District Rep for the Libertarian Party in Indiana. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
So in talking with the local Libertarian chairman, we've heard that there is an interest in winning some local races this year. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what a few of those races the party has their eye on?
So I can't speak in detail. I don't want to tip the hand of any candidates that are currently unannounced. But I can say that over the last year, we've been building a lot in the Libertarian Party of Indiana. Building on our successes in the 2020 gubernatorial election. And I've been having some conversations with some Libertarian Party members that are interested in running for local office, and at least one that is interested in running for a state legislative seat here in Vanderburgh County.
And as far as that interest that you spoke about, as far as having candidates come and announce an interest to you, what has that been like over the past year? Has it been an increase maybe for the party that you versus previous years?
It's been an amazing increase. We started 2020 with 4 affiliated counties in the 8th District, which is a district that covers 18 different counties. And over the last year, we've raised that from 4 to 9, and we're affiliating our 10th this evening, actually, in Owen County. And each of those parties has seen substantial membership growth, more people coming in interested in running on the label and learning more about the party. We've been out at events all across the district and all across the state, talking to people, letting them know there is another party in Indiana. The feedback's been really positive. We've got a lot of new faces that I didn't see at the beginning of the year, so it's been really exciting.
Jay, the Libertarian Party nominates its candidates by convention, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct. Indiana state election law states that only the 2 major parties are allowed to participate in the primary process, and that is defined as the two parties whose candidates in the Secretary of State's race receive the first place and the second place totals. So we are legally barred from the primary process, so we have to come out of pocket and host our own conventions, which we do at both the county levels for our local candidates and at the state level for higher level offices.
Where and when will the Vanderburgh County Libertarian Convention be held?
The Vanderburgh County Libertarian Convention is going to be on February 6th on a Sunday at 11 a.m. at Amy's on Franklin.
And you mentioned that increased interest in this area. Can you speak a little bit to how you feel about this area of Indiana, their interest in an additional candidate on the ballot?
Well, I'm really excited about it. Vanderburgh County is kind of an outlier in my district, whereas it has a good mix of currently Republican and Democratic voters, whereas most of the counties in the district are heavily skewed one way or the other. So it's really exciting to see how more of a middle ground county is looking at third-party candidates.
And in about a minute that we have left, earlier in the show, we talked a little bit about finances for this year's election. And can you talk a little bit about how the party feels going up against Republican or Democratic candidates that maybe have a hefty financial backing behind them?
So fundraising is always a major issue that we face as the Libertarian Party. We come into it knowing we're going to be at a disadvantage. So we take a real focus on making every dollar stretch as far as it can. If you donate $1 to the Libertarian Party, we are going to think very hard about where that dollar is going to have the most impact. We take that very seriously. But we have been looking into new ways of fundraising and some old ways that we haven't utilized in the past to increase our fundraising numbers moving forward. So we're really excited to implement those ideas.
Well, thank you for being with us today, Jay.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
Thanks to all of our guests for joining us, and to my esteemed co-host, Sarah Less, local government reporter for the Evansville Courier and Press. Next week will be our last episode this year, and we'll highlight some local nonprofit organizations. What's their mission, who do they serve, and what special needs they may have this time of year. Thank you for watching Newsmakers, presented by WNIN and the Evansville Courier and Press.